The moment her father's eyes locked with mine across the ballroom, I knew my career was over. His daughter, the same woman whose scarred face I just cradled in my hands as we swayed to the music, trembled against me. What happened next would change both our lives forever. If you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional content that will touch your heart. Your support means everything. I never meant to attend the Wellington Industries annual gala. As a junior analyst who'd barely survived my 3-month probation period, I wasn't exactly on the guest list. But when my roommate Tyler, the company's rising star graphic designer, came down with food poisoning, he practically threw his invitation at me. "Just go, James. Someone should enjoy the open bar," he groaned from his bathroom floor. "Nobody important will even notice you're there." How spectacularly wrong he would be. The hotel ballroom glittered with wealth and power. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over tables adorned with arrangements of white roses and silver candelabras. I tugged at my rented tuxedo, feeling like an imposter as I nursed a glass of champagne in the corner, watching executives and their spouses network with practiced smiles. That's when I first saw her. She sat alone at a table near the dance floor, half her face turned away from the crowd. Even in profile, she was striking, elegant in a midnight blue gown that complemented her dark hair, which fell in soft waves past her shoulders. But it was her solitude that drew me. In a room full of people desperate for connection, she seemed content in her isolation. Or so I thought. As the orchestra began a slow waltz, I watched couples drift onto the dance floor. The woman's fingers tapped lightly against her champagne flute, her gaze following the dancers with unmistakable longing. I don't know what possessed me. Perhaps it was the champagne, or maybe just the strange magic that sometimes makes us braver than we truly are. Before I could reconsider, I was crossing the room toward her table. "Would you care to dance?" I asked, extending my hand. When she turned to face me fully, I understood why she'd been sitting alone. A jagged scar ran from her right temple down to her jaw, pulling slightly at the corner of her eye and lip. The injury wasn't fresh, the scar tissue had faded to a silvery pink, but in a room full of people obsessed with perfection, it made her conspicuous. Her eyes widened with surprise, then narrowed with suspicion. "Is this a joke?" she asked, her voice soft but sharp. "No," I said simply. "I just thought you might like to dance." She studied me for a long moment, as if searching for deceit. Finding none, she placed her hand in mine. "I'm Elise," she said. "James." As I led her to the dance floor, I felt the weight of dozens of stares. Whispers followed us like shadows. "That's Wellington's daughter. The accident. Poor thing. Who's that with her?" I placed my hand respectfully on her waist as the music swelled around us. She was tense at first, her movements hesitant. "I'm not very good at this," she confessed. "Neither am I admitted. But we can be not very good together." That earned me the first genuine smile I'd seen all evening. As we moved across the floor, I found myself forgetting about the other dancers, the whispers, even the fact that I was an uninvited guest at an event far above my pay grade. There was only Elise, her hand in mine, her eyes, a deep, intelligent brown, holding my gaze. "You're not from Wellington Industries," she said. It wasn't a question. "I am, actually. Junior analyst in financial forecasting. I've been there 3 months. And you don't know who I am?" I shook my head. "Should I?" She laughed then, a sound both surprised and delighted. "No. No, you shouldn't." As the music continued, she gradually relaxed. I discovered she had a quick wit and a sharper mind. She'd studied economics at Princeton and had recently completed her MBA. When I mentioned my struggle with the Harrington account projections, she offered insights that would have taken me weeks to develop on my own. "How do you know so much about Wellington's internal operations?" I asked. A shadow passed over her face. Let's just say I've been around the company my entire life. The orchestra transitioned to a slower piece. Without thinking, I drew her closer. She hesitated for just a moment before resting her head against my shoulder. I could feel her breath against my neck, the subtle scent of her perfume, something with notes of vanilla and amber, enveloping me. "People are staring," she murmured. "Let them," I replied. "They're just jealous I'm dancing with the most interesting person in the room." She pulled back slightly to look at me, her expression vulnerable in a way that made my heart ache. The scar on her face caught the light, and without thinking, I raised my hand to gently trace its path with my fingertips. "How did it happen?" I asked softly. She didn't flinch from my touch. "Car accident. 3 years ago. I was driving home from a late meeting when a truck crossed the median. The driver had fallen asleep." She paused. "I was lucky. He wasn't." The simple tragedy of her words hung between us. I cradled her face in my palm, my thumb brushing lightly over the raised tissue. "It's part of you," I said. "But it's not all of you." Something shifted in her eyes then, a wall coming down, a door opening. She leaned into my touch, and for a moment, the rest of the world faded away. That's when I felt a heavy hand on my shoulder. "What exactly do you think you're doing with my daughter?" The voice was deep, commanding, and unmistakable. I'd heard it only once before, during the company-wide quarterly address. Richard Wellington, CEO of Wellington Industries, founder of the Wellington Foundation, and apparently, father of the woman in my arms. The music continued, but we had stopped dancing. Elise stepped back from me, her expression a complex mixture of defiance and resignation. "Dad," she said, "this is James. He works in financial forecasting." Richard Wellington was a tall man with silver hair and the kind of presence that commanded attention without effort. His tailored tuxedo probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. His eyes, the same deep brown as his daughter's, assessed me with cold precision. "Financial forecasting," he repeated. "And you are?" "James Mercer, sir." My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "James Mercer," he echoed, as if committing the name to memory. "I don't recall seeing you on the guest list." Before I could stammer out an explanation about Tyler's food poisoning, Elise intervened. "I invited him, Dad. As my +1. The lie hung between us. Wellington's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked from his daughter to me and back again. "Is that so?" he said, his tone making it clear he didn't believe her for a second. The ballroom suddenly felt airless. Nearby conversations had hushed as people pretended not to watch the drama unfolding. I could practically feel my career evaporating with each passing second. "Mr. Wellington," I began, "I can explain." "Dad," Elise cut in, her voice stronger now. "James is the first person who's looked at me, really looked at me, since the accident. Not at my scar, not at the Wellington name, but at me." Something flickered across the CEO's face, surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "Is that true, Mr. Mercer?" he asked, his tone unreadable. I looked at Elise, at the strength and vulnerability in her eyes, and knew there was only one answer. "Yes, sir. Your daughter is brilliant, thoughtful, and beautiful. The scar is just geography." Wellington's expression remained impassive, but I noticed his shoulders relax slightly. "Geography," he repeated. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth twitched. "An interesting perspective." He turned to Elise. "Your mother is looking for you." Something about the foundation announcement. Elise hesitated, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. "Go," I said softly. "It's okay." She squeezed my hand once before walking away, leaving me alone with her father. I braced myself for termination, or at minimum, a scathing dressing down. Instead, Wellington gestured toward the bar. "Walk with me, Mr. Mercer." Confused but with no real choice, I followed him. He ordered a scotch, neat, and raised an eyebrow at me. "Bourbon, please," I told the bartender, figuring if I was about to be fired, I might as well enjoy a top-shelf drink first. Wellington waited until our drinks arrived before speaking again. "Do you know why my daughter was in that car the night of her accident?" I shook my head. She was driving home from presenting her analysis on why Wellington Industries should divest from fossil fuels and invest in renewable energy. He took a sip of his scotch. "The board dismissed her. Said she was naive, idealistic. That she didn't understand the realities of the market." He stared into his glass. 6 months later, our competitors who followed similar strategies to what she proposed saw their stock prices increase by 30%. I wasn't sure what to say, so I remained silent. "Elise has always seen things differently," Wellington continued. "She challenges me, pushes the company to be better. But after the accident..." He paused. "She withdrew. Stopped coming to meetings. Declined speaking engagements." He turned to face me directly. "Until tonight, I haven't seen her dance in 3 years." The weight of his words settled over me. This wasn't about me crashing a party or dancing with the boss's daughter. This was about something much more profound. "Sir," I said carefully, "I didn't know who Elise was when I asked her to dance. I just saw someone I wanted to know better." Wellington studied me for a long moment. "The Harrington account," he said abruptly. "Elise mentioned you were working on it." I nodded, surprised. "Yes, sir. It's challenging, but I think with the right approach. I want your analysis on my desk Monday morning. And I want you to work with Elise on the renewable energy initiative she's been developing." I blinked, certain I'd misheard. "Sir? You have good instincts, Mercer. Both with people and, I suspect, with numbers." He finished his scotch. "Don't make me regret this." Before I could respond, he was gone, moving through the crowd with practiced ease. I stood at the bar, bourbon forgotten, trying to process what had just happened. Later that night, as the gala was winding down, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Elise stood there, a small smile playing on her lips. "So," she said, "I hear we're going to be working together." "Apparently so," I replied, still somewhat dazed. "Your father is, not what I expected. He's full of surprises." She hesitated. "Like father, like daughter, I suppose." "I look forward to being surprised," I said honestly. She reached for my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. "The night's still young. Would you like to get some air? There's a garden on the rooftop." As we stepped into the elevator, I couldn't help but marvel at how differently the evening had turned out from what I'd expected. I'd come to an event where I didn't belong and found something I hadn't known I was looking for. Under the stars, with the city lights spread out below us, Elise told me about her dreams for Wellington Industries, for using their resources to make real change in the world. I told her about my own journey, about growing up in a small town with big ambitions. When she kissed me, her scar pressed against my cheek, a reminder that sometimes, the most beautiful things come from places of pain. 6 months later, our renewable energy initiative would transform Wellington Industries. A year after that, Elise would take over as COO, with her father's blessing. And 2 years from the night we first danced, I would propose to her in that same rooftop garden. But all of that was still to come. That night, we were just two people who had found each other against the odds, dancing to music only we could hear, beneath a sky full of possibilities. Sometimes the most unexpected encounters can change our lives forever. A single moment of courage, like asking someone to dance, can open doors we never knew existed. And sometimes, the very things we think might hold us back, our scars, our differences, our past, become the foundation for our greatest strengths. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content that explores the depth of human connection and the beauty that can emerge from our most vulnerable moments. Share in the comments a time when an unexpected encounter changed your life. I read every comment and would love to hear your stories. Until next time, remember that true beauty is never about perfection, it's about authenticity, courage, and the willingness to see beyond the surface.